White object, smooth, featureless, no wings, no rotors, no visible exhaust, no obvious control surfaces, seen by Navy pilots, tracked by military systems, recorded by a fighter jet's targeting pod, discussed before Congress. And still, after all these years, not publicly explained in a way that closes the case. This is episode 4 of our 6-part mini-series, From UFO Files to UAP Science. In episode 1, we began with Project Blue Book in Arrow and asked how UFO reports became modern UAP data. In episode 2, we revisited the 1952 Washington UFO wave and asked what modern radar and artificial intelligence would see today. In episode 3, we returned to Rendlesham Forest and asked how modern sensor fusion, thermal imaging, chain of custody, and base security systems would investigate the UK's Roswell. Now we arrive at the case that changed the modern conversation. The 2004 USS Nimitz Tic-Tac encounter. But today we're not treating the Tic-Tac as just another famous UFO case. We are treating it as the turning point, the bridge between the old UFO era and the modern UAP era. Because before the Tic Tac entered public consciousness, UFO cases were often argued through witnesses, documents, photographs, and official uncertainty. After the Tic Tac, the conversation changed. Now the question was not only what did the pilots see, the question became what did the sensors record? Radar, infrared, targeting pods, operational airspace, military reporting, data preservation, classification, arrow, congressional oversight. The Tic Tac did not just revive UFO interest, it transformed UFOs into a sensor problem, and that may be its greatest historical importance. Welcome to UFO to UAP. I'm your host, Matt Tones, and today in episode 4 of From UFO Files to UAP Science, we're investigating the Tic Tac encounter, the case that turned UFOs into a sensor problem. Let's begin. For decades, UFO cases were mostly built around what people said they saw. A farmer sees a disc, a pilot sees a light, a police officer reports an object, a family watches something over a field, a military witness files a report, a newspaper prints a headline, a government office opens a case. That was the old structure. Witness first, report second, explanation third, and sometimes unresolved. Project Blue Book was built around this model. Rendlesham Forest was largely trapped inside this model. Even the 1952 Washington wave, despite involving radar, still became a historical argument because the evidence was fragmented, incomplete, and limited by the technology and procedures of its time. The Tic Tac changed the frame. It was still a witness case, but not only a witness case. It was still a military case, but not only a military case. It was still a UFO story, but it became something more precise, a UAP data problem. That is why the Tic Tac belongs in this mini-series. It sits exactly at the transition point between old files and modern science. It carries the emotional force of a classic UFO encounter, but the technical demands of a modern aerospace investigation. Trained pilots saw something. Military systems reportedly tracked something. A targeting pod captured something. The government later acknowledged the video. Congress later heard testimony. The case became a symbol. Not because it proves everything, it does not, but because it showed the public what serious UAP evidence might look like when human observation and military sensor systems begin to overlap. That overlap is the future of this field. Witnesses alone are not enough. Sensors alone can mislead. But when trained witnesses and multiple systems appear to point toward the same unknown, the case becomes much harder to ignore. That is the promise of the Tic Tac and also the problem, because the public still does not have the full data package. We have testimony, we have video, we have official acknowledgement, we have descriptions of radar involvement, we have congressional statements, but we do not have every raw sensor track. We do not have a complete public reconstruction. We do not have every system log. We do not have all classified context. So the Tic Tac remains exactly what makes modern UAP so difficult. More credible than most cases, but still incomplete. More technical than older UFO stories, but still not fully transparent. more officially acknowledged than the legends of the past, but still unresolved in the public record. That tension is why this case matters. Question for you. Do you think the Tic Tac case is powerful because of the pilot testimony, the sensor claims, the official video, or the combination of all three? Add your answer in the comments because this case forces us to define what credible UAP evidence should look like. Now, let's go back to November 2004. The setting was not casual. This was not a roadside sighting. This was not someone glancing up from a backyard. This was a US Navy training environment off the coast of Southern California. The USS Nimitz Carrier Strike Group was operating in the area. Military aircraft were flying training missions. Ships were monitoring the operational environment. Advanced systems were active, and according to witness accounts, the USS Princeton had been detecting unusual contacts before the famous visual encounter. That detail matters because the Tic Tac was not described as a single isolated surprise, it emerged from a broader sensor context. The reported contacts had allegedly appeared at high altitude, descended rapidly, moved at lower altitude, and then ascended again. That is the type of behavior that would immediately raise questions in a modern UAP investigation. Was it real? Was it a radar artifact? Was it a system error? Was it multiple objects? Was it one object being tracked inconsistently? Was it a training range issue? Was it a classified platform? Was it a foreign surveillance? Was it atmospheric? Was it something else? These questions are not side details, they are the case, because UAP science begins when an event cannot be explained by the first layer of observation. A visual sighting asks one question, a sensor anomaly asks another. A visual sighting plus a sensor anomaly asks a much harder question. Can the two be correlated? That is the foundation of sensor fusion, and the Tic Tac case became famously precise because it appears from the public accounts to involve both human observation and technical systems. On November 14, 2004, Commander David Fravor and another Navy aircrew were diverted from a training mission to investigate an unusual contact. They were guided toward the area. As they approached, they reportedly saw disturbed water below. Then they saw the object, a white, smooth, elongated shape, the now famous Tic Tac. It appears to move in ways that do not match a conventional aircraft. No wings, no tail, no rotor, no exhaust, no visible propulsion. Fravor descended toward it. The object appeared to react. It shifted, it climbed. Then, according to Fravor, it accelerated away. Soon afterward, the object was reportedly detected near the Combat Air Patrol Point, a distant location known to the pilots. That detail is one of the most extraordinary elements of the case, but it is also one of the reasons full data matters. If the movement happened exactly as described, it would be extremely difficult to explain conventionally, but the public does not have the full raw track data needed to independently verify every detail, and that is our central lesson. The Tic Tac case is powerful because it points toward multi-layer evidence, but it remains debated because the public record is incomplete. And this is what separates modern UAP investigation from UFO storytelling. The story is not enough. Even a compelling story from a credible witness is not enough by itself. The question is, what data exists behind the story? Was it preserved? Who has it? Can it be released? Can it be independently reviewed? Can it be correlated with other systems? Can it survive technical scrutiny? That is how UFOs became UAP science. Now let's compare this with the historical cases that we've already examined. Project Blue Book received thousands of reports, but many were limited by human observation and incomplete records. The 1952 Washington wave included radar, but it lacked the modern sensor fusion package we would demand today. Rendlesham Forest included military witnesses, audio, memos, and physical site claims, but lacked the forensic and sensor capture standards required to close the debate. The Tic Tac is different. It belongs to the era of advanced military systems. It happened in a monitored, operational environment. It involved trained aviators. It included a later targeting pod video. It eventually became part of official US government discussion. That makes it more modern, but it also exposes a new problem. Even in the age of advanced sensors, the public may still receive only fragments. A short video, a testimony, a public statement, a carefully worded official release. The full sensor picture remains behind classification. So the problem shifts. Historical UFO cases suffered from data poverty. Modern UAP cases may suffer from data control. That distinction is crucial. In 1952, we might not have had enough data. In 1980, the data may not have been captured or preserved properly. In 2004, the data may have existed, but not all of it reached the public. That is the evolution from missing data to poorly preserved data to classified data. And that is why the Tic-Tac represents the modern disclosure problem so clearly. It is not just about whether something happened, it's about who controls the evidence. Question for you. If the government has stronger sensor data on the Tic-Tac case but does not release it publicly, should we treat the case as credible, unresolved, or impossible to fully judge? Tell me in the comments because this is one of the biggest tensions in modern disclosure. Now let's talk about the famous video. The short flow of footage, often associated with the Tic-Tac case, became one of the most important pieces of media in modern UFO history. But we need to be precise. The video is not the entire encounter. It does not show Fravor's close visual engagement. It does not show the object over the disturbed water. It does not show the full alleged movement across many miles. It is a later targeting pod recording of an object. That distinction matters. Many people make the mistake of treating the video as if it must carry the entire case. Skeptics look at the video and say that is not enough. Believers look at the wider testimony and say the video is only one piece. The disciplined view is this: the video alone does not prove the strongest claims, but the case is not only the video. The video is one layer in a larger chain: pilot testimony, radar reporting, operational context, targeting pod footage, official acknowledgement, congressional testimony. That chain is the case. A modern UAP investigation would not isolate one video and ask it to explain everything. It would ask how the video connects to the rest of the evidence. Where was the aircraft? What was the sensor mode? What was the range? What was the altitude? What was the line of sight? What was the object's apparent motion? What was the aircraft's own motion? What did the radar show? What did other aircraft see? What did ship systems detect? Were there infrared signature? Was the object tracked continuously? Was there electronic warfare activity? What were the environmental conditions? Could the object be a known aircraft? A balloon? A drone? A sensor artifact? A distant object? A classified system? A foreign platform? That is the standard, and this is where the Tic-Tac becomes educational. It teaches the public that a UAP case is not one clip. It is a data architecture. A video without metadata is limited. A radar return without context is limited. A witness account without corroboration is limited. But if those pieces align, the case becomes stronger. That is why sensor fusion matters. Sensor fusion is the process of combining multiple sensor inputs to produce a more reliable picture. Radar can estimate location and movement. Infrared can detect heat or contrast. Optical systems can provide visual shape. Human witnesses can describe behavior in context. Communication logs can reconstruct timing. Flight data can show aircraft positions. Weather data can rule in or rule out environmental effects. Satellite data can add another layer. When these sources agree, confidence increases. When they disagree, investigators must explain why. The Tic-Tac case became famous because it suggests sensor fusion may have been possible. But the public has never seen the full fusion. That is the frustration. The case points towards the future of UAP science while also revealing the limitations of public disclosure. Now, let's address the possible explanations. The first is misidentification. Could the pilots have misidentified something ordinary? In principle, any visual observation can be misinterpreted. Distance, speed, size, light, angle, and surprise can distort perception. But in this case, the witness credibility is unusually strong. Fravor and other aviators were trained military pilots operating in a professional environment. That does not make them infallible, but it raises the evidentiary value of their testimony. A trained pilot's misidentification is possible, but it requires an explanation that accounts for what they reported in context. The second possibility is sensor error. Could the radar contacts have been artifacts? Could systems have produced false tracks? Could the targeting pod imagery have been misunderstood? Again, possible. Sensors are powerful, but not perfect. Radar can mislead. Infrared systems can be confusing. Targeting pods can produce visual effects, but the challenge is explaining the combination of reported sensor involvement and visual observation. A sensor error alone does not explain a close visual encounter. A visual misperception alone does not explain reported radar contacts. This does not prove anything exotic, it simply makes the case harder. The third possibility is classified US technology. This is often the most grounded, extraordinary explanation. A secret platform, a drone, a technology demonstrator, a black program unknown to the pilots. The United States has a long history of classified aerospace development, so this possibility cannot be dismissed. But it raises difficult questions. Why test such a system near a carrier strike group? Why risk confusing Navy pilots? Why allow the case to become public in a way that drives UAP disclosure? Why has comparable technology not appeared publicly after 2 decades? There may be answers. Compartmentalization can be extreme. Pilots are not briefed on everything. Classified testing can create confusion, but the questions remain. The fourth possibility is foreign technology. If an adversary had that capability in 2004, the implications would be enormous. It would mean a foreign system operated near a US carrier group with extraordinary performance and without clear attribution. That would be a national security crisis. The fifth possibility is a natural or atmospheric phenomenon, but the shape, behavior, and reported response to the aircraft make that difficult to apply cleanly, at least based on witness descriptions. The sixth possibility is genuinely unknown technology or phenomena. That is the category people jump to quickly, but it should be the last category, not the first. A serious investigation should exhaust ordinary explanations before moving toward extraordinary ones. That is not debunking, that is method. The Tic-Tac case is compelling because ordinary explanations have not publicly closed the case. But compelling does not equal solve. That is the disciplined conclusion. It remains one of the strongest modern UAP cases because it survives easy dismissal, not because it proves a final answer. Question for you. What do you think is the most plausible explanation for the Tic-Tac? Classified US technology, foreign technology, sensor error, misidentified object, or something genuinely unknown? Drop your answer in the comments because this case forces every possibility onto the table. Now, why did this case change the public conversation so dramatically? The answer is timing. By the time the Tic Tac story entered mainstream public awareness, the old UFO stigma was weakening. Journalists were more willing to cover the subject seriously. Former officials were more willing to speak. Military witnesses were more willing to come forward. Congress was beginning to ask harder questions. The public had access to more information than ever before, and the term UAP was beginning to replace UFO in official discussion. That language shift mattered. UFO carried decades of baggage, flying saucers, tabloids, late night jokes, conspiracy culture, science fiction. UAP sounded more technical, more neutral, more acceptable in defense and intelligence settings. The Tic Tac case arrived at that exact moment when the subject was ready to transition. It gave the media a credible case. It gave Congress a national security question. It gave the public official video. It gave pilots a reason to speak. And it gave researchers a modern anchor point. It gave the UAP conversation a new center of gravity. Before the Tic Tac, many people asked, do UFOs exist? After the Tic Tac, the question became, why are trained military personnel encountering unidentified objects in controlled airspace? And why does the public not have clearer answers? That is a much more serious question. And it is the question that leads to Arrow, congressional hearings, UAP reports, whistleblower debates, and the modern disclosure movement. The Tic Tac did not create all of that by itself, but it helped open the door. Now, within this mini-series, the Tic Tac plays a very specific role. It is the midpoint between historical mystery and future investigation. The first 3 episodes looked backwards. Blue Book, Washington, 1952, Rendlesham, 1980. Episode 4 brings us into the modern sensor era, and episode 5 and 6 will look forward. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, satellite tracking, anomaly detection, scientific evidence standards. What would finally prove a UAP case? The Tic Tac is the hinge. It shows us why the future cannot be built only on eyewitness testimony. but it also shows us why sensors without transparency are not enough. This is the core lesson. A modern UAP case needs both human observation, machine recording, scientific analysis, and public accountability. If one layer is missing, trust suffers. If witnesses speak but data is hidden, people will speculate. If data is released without context, people misread it. If government makes statements without showing methodology, people distrust it. If scientists are excluded, analysis lacks credibility. If the public is ignored, disclosure becomes control. That is why the Tic Tac case remains unresolved in a deeper sense. Not only unresolved as an object, unresolved as a disclosure event. The object was unidentified, but the process was also incomplete. That may be the real legacy of the case. It revealed that the United States had no publicly trusted system for handling credible UAP encounters. When trained pilots saw something unusual, when sensors reportedly detected something unusual, when video existed, when national security questions emerged, the public still ended up with fragments. That is not good enough for the modern era. And that is why Arrow exists. That is why Congress is interested. That is why whistleblower protections matter. That is why file releases matter. That is why sensor fusion matters. That is why scientific review matters. The Tic Tac case helped expose the gaps between event and explanation, and modern UAP science is supposed to close that gap. Whether it can is another question. Now let's imagine the Tic Tac encounter happening today, not in 2004, today. What should happen? First, the event should trigger immediate data preservation. Radar tracks, infrared video, aircraft telemetry, ship logs, communications, sensor settings, weather conditions, training schedule, airspace data, electronic warfare context, satellite coverage, all preserved. Second, witness debrief should happen quickly and separately. Pilots, radar operators, controllers, command personnel, everyone interviewed before memories blend. Third, sensor fusion should begin. Every data source placed on a shared timeline, every track correlated, every possible conventional explanation tested. Known aircraft, drones, balloons, weather, satellites, sensor artifacts, classified friendly systems, foreign systems. Fourth, classification review should begin early. What can be released publicly? What must remain classified? Can data be downgraded or summarized without destroying its value? Can Congress see more? Can independent scientists review portions under controlled conditions? Fifth, the public summary should be meaningful, not just we investigated and it remains unidentified. But here is what was observed. Here is what data was available. Here is what was ruled out. Here is what remains unknown. Here is why the confidence level is limited. Here is what we're doing to improve future collection. That is what modern UAP transparency should look like. Not spectacle, not secrecy, but method. The public does not need every classified detail, but the public does need enough to trust the process. That is the standard the Tic Tac created, and it is the standard many people still believe the government has not met. Question for you. If a future Tic Tac level case happened today, what would you need to see before accepting it as a truly unexplained? Raw data, infrared video, pilot testimony, satellite data, or an independent scientific review? Leave your answer in the comments. Now let's talk about what the Tic Tac teaches us about evidence quality. There are weak cases, there are interesting cases, there are strong cases, and then there are cases that become standards. The Tic Tac became a standard because people use it to measure other UAP cases. Does this case have trained witnesses? Does it have sensor data? Does it involve military airspace? Does it have video? Was it acknowledged officially? Did it trigger oversight? Did it remain unexplained after review? That is now the benchmark. Not perfect evidence, but layered evidence. This is the future of UAP credibility. A single witness may be sincere, a single video may be intriguing, a single radar return may be unusual, but layered evidence is what moves the field forward. That is why modern detection projects matter. That is why artificial intelligence matters. That is why sensor networks matter. That is why satellites matter. That is why standardized reporting matters. Because the goal is not to produce more stories, the goal is to produce better cases. Cases that can be analyzed, replicated in method if not event, reviewed by experts, compared across systems, and communicated to the public in a credible way. The Tic-Tac case did not fully achieve that, at least in the public domain, but it showed what was possible. It showed that UAP can be discussed in terms of radar, infrared, pilots, military operations, and national security. It showed that the subject could leave the realm of ridicule. It showed that serious people could talk about unknown aerial events without needing to endorse wild conclusion. That was a turning point. But now the bar must move higher. The next major UAP case cannot simply repeat the Tic-Tac pattern. It must improve on it. More data, better preservation, faster analysis, cleaner reporting, more transparency, stronger scientific involvement. That is how the field advances. Now, as we move toward the end of this episode, let's return to the central idea. The Tic-Tac turned UFOs into a sensor problem. Why? Because it made one thing obvious. The future of UAP investigation will not be decided by stories alone. It will be decided by data. But data without access is not disclosure. Data without context is not understanding. Data without preservation is not evidence. And data without public trust is not enough. That is why the Tic-Tac is both a breakthrough and a warning. It broke through the stigma. It forced public attention. It gave the modern UAP movement a credible anchor. But it also warned us that even strong cases can become trapped if the evidence is incomplete, classified, or poorly communicated. That is the lesson. The public does not need every UAP case to be sensational. The public needs the system to be serious. Serious enough to collect data, serious enough to protect witnesses, serious enough to preserve evidence, serious enough to involve scientists, serious enough to brief Congress, serious enough to release what can be released, serious enough to say what remains unknown without pretending uncertainty is proof. That is the future this miniseries is moving toward. From Project Blue Book's paper files to Washington's radar wave to Rendlesham's contested forest evidence to the Tic-Tac's military sensor problem, and next to artificial intelligence. Because in episode 5, we will ask whether AI can solve UFOs. Can machine learning identify patterns across radar, satellites, infrared systems, pilot reports, historical files, weather databases, and sensor networks? Can AI separate noise from signal? Can it find anomalies humans miss? Or will it simply produce new forms of uncertainty? That is where the story goes next. But before we leave the Tic-Tac, we need to say this clearly. The Tic-Tac case does not prove everything. It does not prove alien technology. It does not prove non-human intelligence. It does not prove a secret reverse engineering program, but it did prove something important. It proved that UFO cases could no longer be dismissed automatically as folklore. It proved that trained military witnesses could bring the subject into mainstream debate. It proved that official video could change public perception. It proved that UAP had national security relevance. It proved that the old UFO stigma was vulnerable. And it proved that the future of disclosure would be fought over data. Who has it? Who controls it? Who analyzes it? Who sees it? And who gets to decide what the public is allowed to know? Final question for you. Did the Tic-Tac encounter change the way you think about UFOs and UAP, or do you still believe the public needs much stronger evidence before treating it as a breakthrough case? Leave your answer in the comments. I want to hear where you stand. This has been UFO to UAP. I am Matt Tones. This is episode 4 of our mini-series From UFO Files to UAP Science. If you found this episode valuable, follow the show, share it with someone interested in the Tic-Tac UFO, the Nimitz encounter, David Fravor, Navy pilots, UAP disclosure, Arrow, sensor fusion, and the future of unexplained aerial phenomena. And remember, the Tic-Tac did not end the UFO mystery. It changed the question from what did someone see to what did the system record.